Thank you all for having us.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are a little bit late because I didn't know what I was doing. Welcome to our SEAL webinar on the future of lighting within the energy efficiency world. We are so excited about this. We are at people just jumping in, so we're going to give folks a moment. Happy Thursday to you. We are glad that you're here. We have a great and robust discussion today, and this is a very exciting day at SEAL. Very proud, very happy. We got all kinds of changes going on that we're very excited about, and I'm very happy to announce today, first public announcement, that we have a new president. Dr. Elois Thomas, our former chief administration officer, has been appointed to our president position, and we are happy to see her get elevated, and very excited, me personally, to work with her and see her grow and how we will lead and work to support her to move the organization forward moving into the new year. This conversation is one that I am really tired of listening to. I've been in the energy efficiency world for about 8 years, and I've heard it for probably 5 of them. Lighting's going away, lighting's going away. And so we really wanted to have this conversation and hear from folks, experts, on what their thoughts were and really foster a conversation on how we can move forward within the energy efficiency world and really service people from A to Z, serving everybody, being inclusive in that. So we are excited about that. With that being said, I'm going to introduce our panelists and really let them introduce themselves. We're happy today to have 3 awesome folks joining us from Georgia Power and from Greenlight and the Department of Energy. So we're going to start with Eric, if you could introduce who you are, your role, and who you're representing today.
All right. Good afternoon, Scott. Good afternoon, Brian. Good afternoon, Simran. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the invitation to join this panel. For those who don't know me, I am Eric Arnold. I am with Georgia Power, which is a subsidiary of Southern Company. And I've been with Georgia Power for around 35, getting close to 35 years now, early next year. And so I've worked pretty much all over the company in different capacities, but most recently in energy efficiency, serving as the residential energy efficiency implementation manager, which I oversee our residential portfolio. And it is a 95 gigawatt hour filed goal year over year, in conjunction with our commercial goal of close to well over 300 gigawatt hours year over year. And so our programs run on a 3-year cycle. We're in year 2 of this current cycle, and in the midst of preparing for our next RFP, looking forward to our 2023 cycle. And so our programs include not only lighting, but we have income qualified programs. We have a traditional home energy improvement program. We have a behavior program, as well as demand response program, and a appliance recycling program.
Thank you, Eric, and welcome, and thanks for joining us today. I'm going to kick over to Simran. If she could go ahead and introduce herself, that would be great.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much to SEAL for inviting me to be here today. My name is Simran Kohli, and I'm the Director of Business Development and Strategy at Greenlight. Greenlight is a manufacturer of energy efficiency products for the utility space. We have been around since 1994, and we are very proud to be a visible minority-owned business as well as a woman-owned business. And we manufacture energy efficiency products across lighting measures, water saving measures, weatherization measures, smart home measures, and EV chargers. And we are also Energy Star Partner of the Year for the last 5 years and counting. And we have over 150 utility partners across the country. So we are very excited to be here today speaking to you all on behalf of manufacturers.
And you just had to drop the note about the 5 years in a row. I got it. We're bowing down. We got you, no problem.
You got to do it.
Last but definitely not least, Brian is representing the U.S. Department of Energy. Welcome, Brian. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself And I should say, Dr. Brian Walker, go ahead.
Well, we're not going to stand on ceremony. Thanks so much for the invitation from you, Scott, from Steel. It's such a pleasure to be here. So my name is Brian Walker, as Scott mentioned. I'm the manager for lighting R&D at the Department of Energy. And this is a program that I took over about 2.5 years ago. I've been with the DOE now for about 7 years, but I've only been in this capacity for the last 2.5. I feel like I can brag on the team a little bit. We're talking about lighting, and so I'm sure for the panelists and those listening, you're very familiar with the DOE's role in the space, but just so that I can brag on this great team I work with, we've now funded 347 projects since the inception of the solid state lighting program at DOE. Those projects have led to more than one patent per project, 431 total patents. 346 products directly have come from that. And we're estimating an impact of saving something like 140 billion kilowatt hours that are saved per year, something like 98 million metric tons equivalent of carbon dioxide saved, and saving families and businesses something to the tune of $14.7 billion in avoided energy costs. That's not even counting the cost of longer lived products we don't have to change more often. So really, really excited to be part of a team that has had such an impact, and we couldn't do it, of course, without our partners. And so that's going to be true of the utilities. It's true of the manufacturers. It's why I'm excited to talk about the future of lighting with you here today.
Thank you for joining us, Brian. And I like how you dropped all of the stats. I'm a stat person. I love the data. But the one that stuck out was saving our residents and businesses $14.7 billion. Billion, my favorite monetary amount. So glad to hear that. For all of the folks that are joining us, you are very welcome to ask questions. Put them in the chat. We will address as many of them as possible during the conversation. We do have some preset questions, but feel free to ask them. And I'm just going to jump right in and get started with our panelists. And I want this question really to start it off. Like, is there still opportunity for lighting measures within the energy efficiency space? And if so, in the residential and the commercial space, how will these offerings look differently in the marketplace moving forward? And so thinking about that, from your different perspectives, because you all have very vastly different perspectives, and I might throw mine in there as representing implementation contractors. I might, but I want to start with Brian on this one. So is there still opportunity?
Well, Scott, I'm glad that you brought that up, and to illustrate that point, I think I'll actually turn to some data that we've got. We actually have conducted some studies related to both the technology, but also the adoption potential for where lighting is, where we want it to go, of course, and where we know it can be. So let me know, maybe you can give me a thumbs up. Is that showing up okay for everybody?
You see it perfect.
So, great, excellent. So this comes from our DOE's most recent adoption report. It was released last year based on 2018, 2019 data. And really the point that I mainly want to leave folks with, right, is right there on the top line. Of course, we're seeing progress, right? We're seeing products in the shelves at Walmart and Home Depot. So, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that your eyes are lying to you. At the same time, we can see significant headroom. And I talked a little bit about technology, but here, let me talk about adoption, right? So we look at this adoption curve, and then up there near the top, we're talking about traffic signal exit signs. Of course, those aren't areas where we've got a lot of active R&D at the Department of Energy, because we're more or less 100% in terms of adoption of those of LEDs and those products. But if you look overall, we're less than 50% penetration of LEDs into all markets. Even A-lamps, right? Even bulb replacements are looking less than 50%. Now, if you start looking at other product categories, like linear fixtures, for example, the kinds that we're going to be used to seeing more in commercial buildings, then we're down below 25%. It's a major, major growth area, and it's a major focus for us. Hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit more today. But then if we're talking about connected lighting, the kind of systems that maybe aren't always the top priority for every market segment, I get it. there are definitely some issues, and we're trying to study that. We're trying to understand what some of those issues are. But the fact remains that for achieving some of the goals, the highest energy efficiency goals that DOE believes we can achieve with these technologies, we'd like to see more of those. And right now, it's in the noise. It's 2% or less.
So if you could leave that up for a second, Brian, that would be great. Eric and Simran, I'm going to start with you, Simran. What are your first reactions when you see these? Is this new to you? Like, what are your thoughts when you see this data that Brian has shared?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that Brian had that data available for us all to see, because that's generally what Greenlight is seeing as well, is that there is so much room for lighting to stick around. There's so many sockets still to be swapped over to energy efficient measures. So we're definitely on the same page and seeing the same things like in the real world as Brian is seeing in the data that he's presented here today. We do find some general trends, as you mentioned, Scott. One of your questions was, what are we seeing as trends for lighting programs for residential and commercial? We are seeing a shift towards low income programs, for instance, in underserved markets and hard to reach customers who have not had the ability to access these products for the past 15 years, like some other customers have. In the commercial space, we are seeing a shift towards small business type programs. So we are seeing some shifts, but we definitely see that there's plenty of room for lighting going forwards.
And Simran, I'm glad that you brought up, income qualified communities, because we know how that is exploding within the industry right now. And Eric, having worked with you from SEAL on income qualified programs. First, I want to hear your response to this, but also want to pivot a little bit because we had a question come up in the chat on this data. And Brian, if you have this data to pull up shortly, that's fine. But I want to hear Eric's thoughts on this about statistics on or similar charts with statistics around penetration for underserved income disadvantaged communities. How does this compare? Go ahead, Eric.
No, when I look at this chart, the first thing I think about is, there's this baby, right? First name specialty, or first name lighting, or efficiency, and last name lighting, right? And so this baby born somewhere maybe in the 70s, right? And, we're thinking just because we were trying to early adopt these twirly things called, compact fluorescence, that everybody got fed the same nutrition, right? This baby was really fed with some different food or from a different demographic. And so as we have grown here, we're assuming that this baby has grown up in some ways, but it has not. Early adoption was you were feeding that, Gerber baby food, it was mushy, and you still wanted to pick out the fruit. Nobody wanted to feed the baby any vegetables. But we got this thing called diversity. And it's hard not to look at this through a DEI lens, but that diversity are the vegetables that people are assuming because this baby's gotten a little older, it's had all this nutrition, it had a chance to grow up very healthy, but in fact, it's missing some nutrition in those areas that have been harder to penetrate. And I want to say that, one of the successes that we've seen, and I give full credit to my program manager, Jamie McKenzie, that we've seen some success from even 2020 to 2021, where we've shifted focus to income qualified areas to where we were penetrating maybe 32% of income qualified areas with our portfolio. And we're almost 50% in 2021 because we've shifted to more retailers around the Dollar Trees, the Ollie's, and huge penetration with our Habitat restores. And so people are thinking just because we fed this baby through these big box stores and that adoption has happened with these folks that have the means to afford them and have the volume in these stores, we're forgetting to penetrate these smaller markets and feed them more diversity food to this baby so it can fully grow up on the right nutrition. So we cannot leave off the plate this diversity of vegetables that we have to look at. And we're talking the mom and pop stores on the corner that don't have the marketing dollars to put forth a lighting display to even penetrate those markets. And so I really shift the marketing to these areas. And if we're not careful, at the end of the day, if we call this baby grown we look back at the carbon footprint, you may as well take a carbon copy of the red lines from years ago, because that's what your carbon foot's going to look like. It's going to look like that demographic that you never served.
I love that. And I love that analogy, and that's the truth. And one of the things that I'm glad it was put in the chat, as I said, is how do we look at these programs and products, and specifically here, these measures as we relate to DEI. And I'm gonna, on the commercial side, particularly where Brian said, and as the chart says, as we see in the chart, there's much more space on the commercial side, particularly when we look at lighting as a measure moving forward. Earlier this year, aligning with DEI and being very inclusive, we had a panel, a webinar panel discussion around should small businesses on the commercial side be equated to low income or income qualified programs on the residential side? And I say that because, to your point, Eric, those smaller businesses aren't going to have the same wherewithal to do what some of these other businesses have been able to do to get the product out, hence missing our more rural and disadvantaged communities. And so it really is a connector. I keep singing it. It's my song that will probably come out one day soon about small business and income qualified, the connection. But here you really just made that poignant, and it's really showing in the chart here. So I appreciate that. Was there anything that anyone else wanted to share as we look at the stats that we see on the screen?
I'll have to add too that the same argument goes for our small businesses, right? And now, how many folks still walk into a mom and pop business and still see, T-Child lighting, right? And some of those are just flickering and things like that. And so to make the assumption, because the majority has adopted, that the minority has been taken care of. And so we still have to continue to build these direct install programs for our small commercial and mom and pop businesses that don't have the affordability, because they're still getting by on small profits just to make it, much less make an investment in energy efficiency. So perspective, lighting is still very important.
Great. And that's where we are. So lighting is very important. We see that there's opportunity. So for the consumers that may not have that opportunity anymore, because there are some, and they're still, supporting the work of utilities, because we kind of have to. Are there other electric saving measures on the horizon that can kind of come in to replace that? And if so, what impact would they make? And what are some of those that we may be seeing in the marketplace? And Eric, I'm going to start that question off with you.
Yeah, so at what point do you start getting into the advancement? And we got this long train of, again, just because the front of the train has reached the station, you got this caboose way back here that the front of the train may be ready for more advanced technology. I'm sure that Simran can comment on this, that when you start getting into, connected lighting, when you start getting into technologies for, daylight, on and off at night and things like that, or voice command or remote to your phone, the front of the train is ready for those things. And when you got to get the back of the train even to adopt LEDs from that standpoint. So I think there is still a line of technology just waiting to be leveraged, but you can't get there until you get that whole train moving through the station at the appropriate rate. And so we can't stop the train because the front of it's ready for advanced lighting without making sure that the caboose is at least going through the station.
Eric, what are your thoughts on that? I'm sorry, Brian?
Well, I absolutely think, in response to Eric, in response to the question that we got earlier, we absolutely have to think about what it means to take care of energy efficiency at the point where everybody's ready. And I think we got to push folks in some cases. So for some people that have an older, say, LED system, and it's possibly time for them to upgrade, that's something that we're thinking about. But Eric, I take your point exactly. There are plenty of folks that are not being well served, haven't been well served up until now and still aren't. In response to the question about the breakdown in data, that's been an area where DOE needs to do better. That's a place where I've directed my team to look more into. We don't have a report that's ready to share with people or data that's ready to share about what the demographic breakdown is, for example, with adoption, but it's absolutely the right question to be asking. I'm right there with you.
Thank you. And Simran, you know, you all work, like you said, you all have over 140 utility partners who work nationally. From a national landscape, what are your thoughts on this? Like, what are new measures? What is the thought and how we can replace this? Because it impacts you as a manufacturer. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess just in response to, you know, Eric's comments, we at Greenlight definitely still believe there's so much room left for lighting, especially when, like Eric said, there's so many people at the back of the train that still need to adopt these products. So what we've done is we've really focused on providing these products to underserved markets. So where Georgia Power has programs with Habitat for Humanity and Ollie's and Goodwills and Salvation Armies, those are all Greenlight products that are being distributed to those low-income communities. And we also run food bank programs across the country where I believe last year we distributed over 15 million Energy Star bulbs through Feeding America partnerships to be able to distribute those products to underserved markets and help those people move up the train a little bit. In terms of other measures, I think our general belief is there's nothing as cost effective for utilities as light bulbs or as LED bulbs. So in terms of the, you know, kilowatt savings per dollar spent or efficiency dollar spent, there's nothing better than an LED light bulb. And considering the data that Brian shared earlier, we can clearly see that there's still so much room there. We do see smart bulbs, connected lighting, integrated homes, integrated businesses as the next step. But again, I think we're far away from that being the norm. Lighting still is a long way to go.
So I have a follow-up question for you, Simran. And I know the great work that Greenlight does. We've done a lot of food bank and lighting kits and things of that nature. And what we've heard, SEAL specifically, from various evaluation companies that we've partnered with our utility clients, is often when we disperse the lighting kits, they're not being utilized adequately. And I'm talking in generality, so please don't hit me in the chat. But they're not being utilized at the levels that it's not being optimized in terms of the utilization of these kits. And so is that something that you see? Because saying that we've distributed this many with Feeding America, I can't tell you how many food bank and food distributions I've done in my lifetime. I think it is a great work, but is there education that comes behind it? Are people actually utilizing the light bulbs and understanding the difference? Because when I go through buildings, particularly various income qualified multifamily spaces, a lot of them not just still have CFLs, they still have the hot incandescent bulbs. It's like, why do you not have, and they might have a box of LEDs to the side, like, oh, well, I'm waiting for this bulb to go out, or I'm waiting, and I'm like, whoa. So what are your thoughts there when we look at that longevity?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah, so what we have found is that obviously when dealing with different customers, the way that you provide energy efficiency education and installation information has to be accessible to everybody. So what we really focus on is being able to make that information easy to digest. So how to install the products, where to use them in your home, that all of that information is available in images. So this can be used in all of these different places, and all of our product packaging has all of that information available. We also work really hard to make our packaging as inclusive as possible. So all of our product packaging for low income programs is available in Spanish and in English. For a lot of our customers, we found that there is a large Spanish speaking population in the low income demographic that previously didn't understand how to use these products at home. So we really do try and provide that information in Spanish and English as well. And then we also engage customers at the food banks, food pantries, and food shelves where we host events, and we'll have utility clients set up tabletops, talk about the product, explain how to use them, and then kind of engage with people on a one-on-one basis. And then I guess I'll say the last thing we do is we also do survey cards. So on a product packaging that's branded for utilities, we often have a survey where customers can be incentivized to install the product and then call or email to receive a $20 Walmart gift card or an Amazon gift card, or just something to help people understand the importance of installing these products right away. And the last step we do is instructional and educational YouTube videos that are available both in Spanish and English for all of our products as well, to really help the evaluation piece for those low-income programs.
Thanks.
And I've got to tag on to what Simran is saying too, because I think it's important that we also meet people where they are. And that point around the corner stores and things like that, that really don't have the access to even the supply chain to get the volume or the price points of what's needed in those stores. But we recently have penetrated more into the Asian market to where we're putting native language in those stores and displays. And so in order for us to really get them to adopt, we can't keep throwing communication to them that we understand, right? We got to start talking in their language and explaining the benefits and the efficiencies. And we've got to be willing to support on the marketing side, and we've got to be willing to support on the supply chain side to make it work.
I completely agree. Thank you. Thanks so much, Simran, for that. We have a question in the chat that I wanted to go back to, and whoever wants to answer this. When we were talking about the future of lighting as a measure, one of the questions said, can we talk a little bit more about the role of lighting controls in this whole scenario? So I don't know who wants to tackle that. Not all at once. Oh, thanks, Brian.
I'll start, but I don't have the most important thing to say, I think, here by any means. So look, I think controls are very important from an energy efficiency side, right? And I know who I work for. I know why the Department of Energy has a lighting R&D program, right? It's because we're interested in saving energy, and we're interested in saving, again, families and businesses money. And controls could be a very important part of that. Now, we also know from talking to some of the industry partners, some of the folks, right, working elsewhere in the value chain, the installers, the specifiers, so many folks tell us about what the problems are associated with controls, and we're trying to iron some of those out. We actually just recently published a series of reports from some of our living laboratories, right? Trying to understand what some of these issues are, what are the barriers? Why is it that when I go out and I talk to folks, they say, hey, these are systems that nobody wants. Our customers don't want them. Manufacturers, some of them have been telling us we can't sell them. And nevertheless, DOE, is in this position of looking like we're pushing these products. So that's one of the reasons why I have to say, right, I want to be as forthright as possible. We're trying to make sure that the best information gets out there so that manufacturers are aware of what some of the real challenges are, in case they're not aware already. We try to do that in a way that still makes them want to work with us. So, right, we'll still name names. DOE has been known for that in lighting. If we have, for example, a manufacturer who's making claims that just don't stand up to the evidence, when we go out and we check things. But at the same time, we understand that there are a lot of common issues across controls, being difficult to understand, difficult to install, repair, maintain, all the rest. And if that issue cuts across, and why can't we pool our understanding and help everybody get better? And so, again, that's the spirit in which some of that work is being done. I remain optimistic. This is an area that we want to see a lot more adoption when it's ready. But again, I don't blame folks in the slightest for not wanting a product if it doesn't work with what they want to see.
Thank you. And thank you, Brian, for responding to the chat. There was a question about the report that he shared earlier. It was from 2016, 2018. And the question was, when will the 2020 report be out? And we know our government is what I'll say, since I'm being recorded and I don't know who's watching. But as Brian said, things aren't always as timely, but by mid to late 2022, that report should be out, and you should look for it. And it's always good to check the DOE site. But Brian, if you want to let us know, we can share information as well with folks so they can see the report and understand what's going there. We got a great question that just came up, and this was for all panelists, and I really want to hear everybody's opinion on this, starting with Eric. Do we think that LED bulbs is the best way for income qualified residents to start the journey of energy efficiency? That's a really good question.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I think it depends on, the starting point too. So you have these two demographics of single family and multifamily, right? And that's really two different sets of behaviors. If I'm in my own home and, I'm holding on to incandescent bulbs because, they still work, right? Still probably has an easy bake oven and he needs that 100-watt bulb to bake that cake. But for whatever reason, people don't like to throw things away. And if it works, I'm going to keep it, or I'm going to leave that in until it dies. I'm going to put those in. So it's really, I think, the best place to start, because if you think about the demographic of income qualified, you don't have as many of the amenities in the home of some traditionals. And so one, you're assuming that, besides HVAC, heating, there's not going to be a whole lot of computers. There's not going to be a whole lot of things in that other category that's going to use energy. And so which one are they going to control the most besides the thermostat, right? And even having the conversation of smart thermostats and income qualified housing and things like that, it's a different conversation because we struggle to even get multifamily to adopt those, right? And so right now, you're having trouble controlling what's 50% of your energy use or better. You got to go to that next level of controls. And I think lighting is still just the easier one because it gets the most, it gets left on. And so you got these things called behaviors that you got to control. And see, again, outside of HVAC, and then you put in this thing of controls on top of that. When you can't control behaviors, you have to put in controls. And I think that's where even multifamily misses the boat, because again, it's almost like you loan somebody something, and if they didn't pay for it, they don't have the same level of appreciation. And so what's my incentive to control my behaviors when I don't necessarily pay the bill or have a stake in it? And I think you see more of that in multifamily and common areas where folks may not have the same desire to adjust their behaviors because they don't necessarily own the bill. You have to have controls. But going back to the question, I think LEDs are definitely the right place to start because again, most of the folks that we're talking about, they missed the boat on CFLs. They never got them installed. And all of a sudden we phased that out and we've jumped at LEDs. And so there was a whole gap of efficiency transition that they missed. And so I think you gotta pick a place to start. And I think that's where you start.
Simran, your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So I definitely think that, I guess you could say LED lighting is the gateway to energy efficiency for most customers. It is definitely the most accessible measure available. When you think that you can get, a 4-pack of 60-watt replacement bulbs for 99 cents, and those save 85 to 90% on your electrical savings. I mean, the transition for a customer, the customer experience is the easiest and the simplest. So from that perspective, lighting is definitely still the first foray to energy efficiency for most customers. We know that, every residential home has about 30 to 40 sockets that need to be retrofitted. And what's easier than switching out your light bulb? The learning curve for smart thermostats is still steep. The investment for washers and dryers is steep and not accessible to everybody. So lighting is definitely at least the first step. And once somebody makes that experience and they've had, another question that popped up here is the value of Energy Star. So somebody's bought an Energy Star LED bulb that is incentivized and they've had that positive customer experience with a product that's 100 lumens per watt. That experience is going to change their behavior going forwards. And that's what we're looking for really, right? Is the first experience that's a positive experience to then impact future behaviors. So we really do believe that lighting is that first step.
Thanks, Simran. Brian, what are your thoughts?
Well, I first just want to say I don't have very much to add. I think the insights that Eric and Simran are offering here, they're coming from the field, working with directly with programs, directly with incentives, in a ways that's not my day job, candidly. I do know there are folks at the Department of Energy working, for example, as part of the Better Business, the Better Buildings program, to create awareness and to really bring the level of publicity to companies that are really doing the right thing by incorporating energy efficiency measures. But right, there's such a diversity of programs that are happening that both Moonlight and our friends at Southern also are working with that I don't have much more to add.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Eric and Simran really hit the nail on the head. And I want to highlight something that Simran said to the question. I don't think it's just the best place for income qualified residents. I think it's the best place for anyone because everybody is familiar with lighting and they think they have some knowledge that they can wrap their hands around as it relates to lighting. You cut the light switch on. I mean, I go through the house all the time cutting lights off because it's saving energy. I don't have that same control or same relationship with other energy source products within my house. I don't. And so I think it's a good place to start. And I'm glad that because I did leave out the Energy Star part. So thank you, Simran. But I do think it's a really great place to start to get people thinking about what their behavior what they can do behaviorally to change the usage and their bill, and then how that, to your other point, Simran, impacts the rest of their behavior related to their energy efficiency journey. So I really appreciate that. Simran, you had a question that is in the chat and it says, they really appreciate hearing the surveys, great idea for surveys on the utility branded LED packaging. And we do that. Has Greenlight, however, thought of creating a bonus whereby the Greenlight packaging can be mailed back with the old incandescent or CFL bulbs inside, similar to having application recycling for old refrigerator, but in this case, old light bulbs?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I saw that. I loved it. I actually screenshotted it. So that is a wonderful idea. What we do that's quite similar is we do work with appliance recycling programs. Mm-hmm. And so what we'll do there is when somebody does sign up for appliance recycling, we will provide an Energy Star LED 4-pack traditionally of A19s that are then a leave behind kit for the customer. So they have swapped out their larger appliance, and then we're also providing some Energy Star LED light bulbs to further their engagement with energy efficiency products in their homes. So kind of like the next step that way. But I love the idea of kind of sending back your CFLs, and we'll definitely look a little bit more into that.
Yeah, I love that too. We should talk about that, Simran, because what people constantly ask about is, what do I do with my old bulbs or my old products when you swap out any of the products? So that's a really great suggestion and idea. So thank you for sharing that. So I do want to, anybody who wants to take this, because this one is in the chat, where are the biggest impacts these days and into the future being made in regards to the energy efficiency kits, kit programs rather, upstream, midstream, and or downstream rebate programs? Where is the bigger impact? And that might be more Eric, more Simran, but what are your thoughts?
I think the bigger impact is really doing direct install. It's really identifying.
So not the kits at all.
Yeah, well, kits I think are a great add, but what are the guarantees that the kits will utilize? That's just my pain point with kits in general. You send them, but somebody still has to do something, right? And they make bulbs for the one that's burnt out. But when you think about the caulking, the weather strip, sometimes those get to be a DIY tasks that that person may not have the capability of doing. So again, it's a great start. It's better than have a kit than nothing at all to start with. But I think to ensure that folks are properly either, sealing up a home or installing the bulbs in the right type of sockets, things like that. I think that's where direct install and identifying that demographic. And again, going back to meeting them where they are. Not only are we going to provide this program, but we're going to ensure that these things get installed. And we're going to talk about the behaviors on the back end of that to maximize savings going forward.
That's interesting, Eric, because one of the things that we found out, and I think our last webinar was about virtual assessments. One of the things that hit everybody, within the pandemic was we had to switch to virtual, which was a higher utilization of kits. And how to your question, how do we know that people are installing the products that they get, that their behavior is being changed? And there's so many ways with technology, and regardless of income, everybody has one of these. Particularly income qualified folks, make sure that their phone works. So that's typically their only connection to different things. And so there's so many ways to connect people to video and different things that they can walk through to not only engage them in that kit that they may have gotten to do an install virtually, but also connect them in new ways to that utility, to understand and trust and see the utility as an asset opposed to seeing them as an enemy. And we definitely can talk about ways of doing that because we've seen how it can be successful and how it's worked, particularly for folks who feel marginalized by the utility. So I hear you loud and clear, and I agree. I mean, I hear everybody typically in your seat say the best is direct install, but from a cost effectiveness, how do we shift that a little bit and empower people more to learn and understand about energy efficiency? I didn't know, Simran, if you had anything to add about the space for kits or not.
Yeah, so Greenlight has actually seen a tremendous amount of success from energy saving kits. And we find that a way to kind of speak to Eric's concern is to make very custom kits for each customer. Mm-hmm. So what we spend a lot of time doing is working directly with our utility clients to decide, hey, who are we trying to reach with this kit? What's the information that is targeted towards this customer? Who is our audience? How are they going to engage with these products? And how do we make sure that these products are a good fit for them and they're excited to take these home and put them in? And so the kits that we make are very pointed. So we do senior citizen kits, we do school kits, we do gas and electric only kits for certain zip codes, we do Spanish language kits. So we really work closely to determine what measures are appropriate for which audience and how they will be used in their home, and then accompany it with marketing materials that again are very targeted. Something that we have found to be successful for programs where there is a concern with customer buy-in is to have the customer actually select the kit they'd like to receive and then sign up for it. And that way you have the customer being engaged with the kit, deciding which one they like, and then signing up because they know they want the products in that particular kit. So there's a lot of things that we can do to engage the customer, help them with the journey, and really make sure that they have installed the products. And something else that we can always add is like a follow-up after the kit's been distributed. So you can kind of re-engage there.
I want to circle back to the question. Where do you see, particularly for Greenlight, the biggest impact currently, and even going into the future, as the question says, for kits? Is it in upstream, midstream, and or downstream? Like where do you see it being, oh, this is a great opportunity?
So for us in particular, we are seeing a lot of kits focused on IQ communities as the biggest trend for Greenlight going forward. So we're doing a lot of food bank kits, a lot of IQ kits, and then a lot of not-for-profit kits into 2022. And then we're also seeing, I saw a question pop up about like youth and education. So we're also seeing a lot of school kit programs being successful going forwards for us.
And so the customization of the kits that you referenced earlier, is that still applicable in those areas? The nonprofit, the food bank, the school is
absolutely. They're all custom tailored.
Great. That is really good to hear. We have a really This is a really good question because
And sorry, Scott, I hate
Oh,
to
I'm sorry,
interrupt,
Brian.
but just before we move too far past some of those questions, I just wanted to really underscore several things that Simran said in her answer, which I thought were spot on. The value proposition we're seeing with lighting, I'm just now solely focused on lighting, right? Because that's where I spend all my time. But we spent a fair amount of time thinking about what good quality lighting looks like in a number of different settings. That includes care settings, right? Senior care centers, includes hospitals, includes right office settings, schools. And what Simran was saying is just so spot on, that it's going to mean something different for every audience, and having a customized solution. She knows her business. She knows Greenlight obviously better than I do, but I mean, that's so consistent with everything that we're seeing at DOE. So really applaud that. And then the only other thing I'd say, if I could plug really briefly on the education question, DOE actually has announced its L Prize, the lighting prize, that covers some of the topics that we're discussing, including notably special incentives to diversify lighting. Diversity, equity, and inclusion in innovation is such a huge and important part of this. And so that prize, if I can actually share the screen again, sorry. I promise I'll be brief. But that prize, the concept phase, think of it being like a concept car, right? It's really all about plans. That prize is actually closing, that first phase of the prize is closing on November the 19th. And so I just wanted to highlight that for folks that might not be aware. The information is here. It's 3 phases total. It's $12.2 million total prize pool. Everything from the concept to the prototype, then to the actual manufacturing and installation. So please check it out. Check out the link to find out more.
If you could put the link, Brian, in the chat, that would be great.
I certainly will.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
So one of the things that's happening because of the pandemic is costs of things are going up drastically. And so here's a question here that says, as it relates to the onboard lighting controls and other lighting control systems, how do you see the industry responding to the increased costs as compared to standard non-controlled bulbs of this technology compared to the incentives being offered? In my experience, and this is the person asking the question, many folks check the box by installing a low wattage bulb and not spending the extra money on controls due to incentives. What are your thoughts on this? This is a really good point. Any thoughts on this?
I'm trying to balance that question in my head a little bit there.
So Eric, because you're a utility, have you looked, and I know you're more residential, but has Georgia Power looked at, okay, we really need to respond with our incentive levels because these costs are going up, where we can really have greater impact on the long-term energy savings, opposed to, because people are opting to do less because the incentive isn't there. It's not comparable to this crazy, these crazy spikes in costs right now.
Yeah, and a lot of it boils down to the economics, and I quite honestly, what your avoided costs of doing business. And so when we look at a program, every cycle, we've got to look at what's currently available in the marketplace, how affordable it might be, and then that's taken in one place in time. And so when people reference things going up, where are we in terms of those economics at the time, and what snapshot that we take to design these programs? And I think that's why you do these energy efficiency programs, or at least for us, 3 years at a time, because the environment changes, and every time you look at those economics, it may dictate a different outcome. When I think about our previous new home program, once code got caught up to it and builders were building homes to the standard that we were trying to encourage, that program ran its course. And it's sort of the same here. When what technologies are impacting the cost, and how does it fit into the mix of you determining the impact of somebody doing this based on your program, and what is the value of the incentive, or how much incentive should you pay for somebody to do that? That's it's a difficult question to answer, because it all relates back to what are the economics at the time of the program when it's being designed.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else on that?
I would just say in response, we always know human behavior, and I know that Eric spoke to that a little earlier on the webinar, but I mean, human behavior is such that we're not going to make a very expensive decision without, if there's a cheaper option, really. And that's just the pattern of customer behavior. And so I think in recognizing that, either the utility partners will, when they're examining the economics, make that decision or not. But we, at the end of the day, we do understand how customers and businesses shop. So.
Anything, Brian, to add on that?
Oh, I think they covered it. Thanks.
Okay. Simran, I do have a question for you. As we're wrapping up, we already only have 8 minutes left. I am loving this discussion. I was like, what is happening with the time? But what do you think or see, and anybody else can add to this, of course, as well, will be the impact for manufacturers with the alleged lighting sunsetting as a measure? And I use the word alleged. And I also want to add, as a caveat to that, what has the looming conversation even about that, no pun intended, about lighting going away as a measure, how has that even impacted lighting manufacturing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess for, as this ISA backstop conversation comes to a head, and we'll see, like you said, we'll see what happens in the next few years. But for lighting manufacturers, for a manufacturer like Greenlight, where we only manufacture energy efficiency lighting, so we only manufacture LEDs and distribute them, and that's all we've ever done, it won't really affect a manufacturer like Greenlight other than shifting the distribution channel. So right now, most of our LED bulbs are distributed through residential utility programs. Going forwards, they'll be distributed through retail channels. And so it won't really affect us as much as a manufacturer like the big giants. So like GE Osram, Philips Signify, these manufacturers that manufacture not only energy efficient lighting, but also incandescents and halogens, they will clearly be affected by this, transition moving forwards. They have invested a great deal in factory lines, in equipment to manufacture incandescent products. And so that's definitely going to be interesting to watch how that plays out over the next few years. So we do see that impacting some of the giants that are manufacturing across incandescent and halogens, as well as energy efficient lighting sources. And some things that we've seen and responded to, just to be as proactive as possible, is, like I mentioned earlier, we have diversified our product portfolio. And that's something that we've done as a proactive measure to continue to serve our clients when lighting does, make a change, or when lighting is not the only measure that is important to our clients. So we've definitely made kind of forays into, water saving products, weatherization products, EV chargers, and really diversified our product portfolio to be able to continue to serve our customers with efficiency measures for their programs.
Awesome. Any additions to that? Okay.
I'll just circle back to and just say, one of the other things you look at in terms of economics is when you start getting beyond the base of the savings and you start adding or layering in controls, what's the incremental savings are you going to achieve from that? If they become so small that your investment is going to be greater than your return, that's a difficult position for you to overpay an incentive for something that you really won't realize enough savings on.
I just thought something else to add is that even if, the ISA backstop does come into play, I believe that it is, the definition is 45 lumens per watt. An Energy Star LED product has a definition of 100 lumens per watt approximately. That being said, the customer experience that we're all after and able, in order to have behavioral changes and positive customer experience, is based on the quality of the product. And so as a manufacturer, it's important to continue to support the Energy Star certified products, even if ISA comes into play, because it's very important that customers continue to have a positive experience with these products. I know we saw a long time ago in California, customer experience was not strong with some efficiency products. And then we saw those savings fall off and that customer behavior change. And that would be a real shame, considering all the work that we've done for so many years to have a positive customer experience with our efficiency products and programs.
Thank you. Brian, you have a question, and it was under, I think, the questions, not specifically in the chat. It said regarding the graph, great adoption curve graph. Are exterior residential bulbs represented here under building exterior, or is that for commercial buildings only?
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. So I believe it was asked by Chris there in the Q&A, and I did actually I sent a message. I hope Chris got it, but I think I know the answer. I think it's grouped with street and area, but I'm not sure enough. I wasn't sure enough to put it in writing, and I'm going to say it's pretty tentative. So I'm going to get back to Chris. I asked him to connect with me. I gave him my email address, and I'll give him an answer for sure.
Thank you. With just a few minutes left, we talked a little bit earlier, and we've been really talking about how important lighting and this measure is, particularly with income qualified customers. And so Simran has talked about it. I've talked about it. We've talked about how lighting has been used really as an outreach method, as a tool to get to customers. How do we see customer engagement being affected by the possible shift in LED Energy Star bulbs being a measure that could still be utilized within the market? Eric, I'll start with you.
I think based on, just rehashing the earlier conversation, is it's still a good leading product to have conversations with our customer on the greater subject of energy efficiency, right? Because again, no pun intended, but it's still the most visible product, right? The first thing you do when you walk into a house, you turn on the light. Mm-hmm. So it's such an easy starter conversation that I think it's always going to be, whether it's a baseline LED or you start getting into smart bulbs and things like that. Yeah. I think it will continue to be a conversation starter.
Okay. Brian or Simran, anything to add there?
Sure. I would just say that another way that we think it's going to affect customer behavior is in terms of the rate at which they buy LED bulbs and install them. So like we said, normal customer behavior is you only buy a light bulb when one dies or burns out, right? You're not going to buy light bulbs. And right now with our utility incentive programs, a customer will see a great deal and they'll be impulsed to make that purchase decision. If that goes away, you will find that customers are not changing their light bulbs at the same rate as they are today with these utility incentive programs. And so you'll find a real slowdown in purchases and in savings associated with LED bulbs because people will not be behaving or purchasing the products at the same rate as they are today because of these programs.
Okay. And Brian, 10 seconds. Any comment to add on that?
Well, I'll say that my day job is innovation. We're highly interested in seeing where the future energy efficiency is. I'm also a civil servant, but my leadership at DOE is fully committed to doing everything possible to drive forward the decarbonization, very, very aggressive decarbonization targets. And so there's a lot of conversations about what's possible.
Okay, great. I do want to thank all of you. I do want to make a note right here. Eric Arnold, you are the best storytelling with the analogies. That was like, I love it. That's one of the reasons why I invited you to this. I was like, watch Eric play. So thank you, Eric. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Simran, very much. I do again want to let you know that our next webinar is going to be Thursday, December 9th from 12 until 1. And we will be talking about DEI in action, how to move it forward in your workplace and in your life and how to make it move. I thank you so much for this great conversation. You can see it later on our website. And to our panelists, thank you, thank you, thank you. And have a great day.
Thank y'all. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
So hard to get everybody